So, today's lecture is on part of speech tagging. So, part of speech tagging is again one of the very important steps which are done on the data, so that the data looks very rich in its linguistic representation. So, the task on POS or part of speech tagging is assigning grammatical categories like noun, verb, adjective to words in a sentence. Why does it is required? Of course, it helps in understanding the syntactic structure and the meaning of the sentence, because there are certain cases words are ambiguous, right. So, to disambiguate the words in isolation, POS tagging is in the use, and later it will be used in the complete understanding of syntactic structure. So, it is done by using POS tagger, which assign tags based on word context and linguistic rules. So, examples are noun, verb, adjective, adverb, pronoun, determiner and whatnot. There are many more categories that need to be annotated. So, this particular tagging is a fundamental task in natural language processing, because it is used in various applications like information retrieval, sentiment analysis, machine translation and whatnot. Wherever the data need to be enriched with some kind of linguistic representation, POS tagger helps us there. Okay. So, this is what the whole task of POS tagging in NLP looks like. So, when you have a sentence like I like to read books, now if you look at the word in isolation, now let us say like can be a verb, or like can be something like comparative marker. So, he looks like his father, that means he is looking similar to his father. So, that is a kind of particle, right. So, his like, if you want to say, then there it can be a noun. So, it can have multiple function. Similarly, books, it can be a verb or it can be a noun, but given a context like I like to read books, so we have to select only one category. So, here it is a verb. If it is a verb here, and then it will be a noun, because it is followed by a infinitive verbal clause. Now, what is POS tagging? It is a process of assigning part of speech to each word in a sentence. So, it is normally sentence based approach, since it helps us looking at the complete sentence and assigning tags to each of the word. And it is try to label each word with its correct part of speech. We can call it as a word category or a word class or a lexical category. So, for example, there are list of words here, and there are number of handful of tags that we are trying to build for languages, and we are trying to assign these tags to the given text is a process that is being done in POS tagging. So, lot of examples we can keep giving. So, for example, noun, and you could see we are trying to use some kind of capital letters and like one or two capital letters to represent the category. These capital letter forms are nothing but mnemonic forms to express that particular category. So, nouns are NN. So, this is chair, bandwidth, pacing kind of thing. Verb, adjective, adverb, preposition or pronoun, determiner or conjunction. So, conjunctions are like coordinating conjunction, that is why CC here, right. So, now what is this difference between the morphological analysis that we have seen earlier to the POS tagging now we are seeing? So, the task of morphological analyzer is to find the internal structure of word, looking at the root and other affixes that are associated with the word, whereas POS tagging is assigning a POS tag to the given surface form of the word. So, it is a word based approach, whereas POS tagger is a sentence based approach. In morphological analysis, we need a smaller number of categories, whereas in the POS tagging, we need lots of categories, right. The categories even which cannot inflect are part of POS tagging, whereas in the morphological analysis, we have seen the categories which can inflect like nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns are most of the categories which can have the ability to inflect. But the other categories like preposition, conjunction, particles are not being taken as to understand the internal structure, because they do not involve in taking any inflection. On the other hand, they are also ambiguous. So now to tackle that ambiguity, we need to build a lot of categories under the POS tagging. And in the morphological analysis for a given word, we may get one or more analysis for a word, but in the POS tagging, it is one analysis for one word. For example, if you take word like back, back can be an adjective as in the case of back door. Back can be a noun as in the case of on my back. Back can be an adverb as in the case of win the voters back, and back can also be a verb as in the case of promise to back the bill, right. So we are trying to get more than one analysis for the verb back, but given the context, it can be associated with only one category. So for example, the back door gives you the category called only JJ because it's preceded by an article and followed by a noun, and this position is actually marked for adjective. Similarly, on my back, when there is a possessive pronoun my, it will be followed most likely by the noun. And win the voters back, since there is a verb already and the noun already, and this back is again an adverb. And you could also see the categories like JJ and RB are used for adjective and adverb respectively. So JJ is a mnemonic form which expresses the adjective, and RB is a mnemonic form which actually denotes an adverb. And promise to back the bill, now this to followed by a back actually expresses that it can be a verb base. So that's why it's a VB. Now, why POS tagging? Do we really need to do it? Let's just question it. Now, of course, it's important because it's a first step in going for the sentential level parsing. So it's more tractable than the full parsing, but it gives you an intermediate representation. Again, let's take another example. It helps in resolving the lexical ambiguity. For example, this is a nice day, there this is a pronoun, okay. This day is nice, there this is a determiner, and you can go this far, here this is an adverb, right. So now the POS tagging problem is to determine the POS tag for a particular instance of a word. So it's useful for several other applications, especially when there are more complex NLP tasks, it's useful. So for example, let's take the speech synthesis. So speech synthesis in English need to understand the category of the word. For example, you could see the highlighted ones over here are the one where there is a stress that is being put on that particular word. So for example, lead versus lead, insult versus insult, object versus object, overflow versus overflow, discount versus discount, content versus content. So now this is the difference in pronunciation comes because one set of the noun, like one set of the column of words here are actually nouns, and another set of words are here actually a verb, right. So the category decides how we need to pronounce a particular word. So now it's important for us to understand the category when we are working with languages like English, because category decides the pronunciation. And similarly, time flies like an arrow. This is a very complex construction, but here the flies, whether it is a noun or a verb, that need to be decided, right. So word prediction in speech recognition cases also it's useful. For example, wherever there is a possessive pronouns, they are likely to be followed by nouns, and wherever there are personal pronouns, they are likely to be followed by verbs. So this kind of predictions will help us in speech recognition part. Not only that, it will be useful in multiple other NLP application. Okay. What is the challenge now? Is there any challenge in building this POS tagging? Of course, the challenge comes through because of ambiguity, because we know that one word can be associated with multiple category, right. So let me again take another sentence, can, the can. So now this sentence, you could see can is being used in different places, and each of the place holding in English is associated with the category. Let's say if you call can first analysis, the first can be a proper noun. Okay, so I'll just put as a proper noun. And second can, let's say it's an auxiliary verb, and the third can is a verb, and the fourth can is a noun. So it gives you the concept or an understanding that there is a person called can, he can, that means he is capable of canning, the action of canning on the can. So can the can, right. So now this understanding comes because we are associating a category to the sentence. So this sentence is now disambiguated because category has been identified. So now while disambiguating any word, we exploit several mechanisms. So for example, the role of other words in the sentence is also being used. For example, if you are calling this can as an auxiliary, this is determined by the previous word also followed word, right. So auxiliary can be followed by a verb, and auxiliary can be followed by a noun or a proper noun. So this knowledge of this particular words are being used to actually understand what would be the role of the current word. Now, we are also using the syntactic structure, because in English the structure is auxiliary will be followed by a verb, right. So now this structure is being used, and the domain of the text is being used. Let's say we are talking about a person called can, because it's in the capital letter, starting with the capital letter C. So now understanding the domain where we are talking about a personality, and the personality's name is can, right. So that knowledge is being used, and of course world knowledge, it's a beyond linguistic knowledge that we are talking about. So all these knowledges are part and parcel of a human brain. Now when we are disambiguating any sentence, we put all kind of information, then finally we are disambiguating it, right. So now how to give all kind of this knowledge representation to the machine, this is the challenge now. It is not only the challenge. Again, there are some challenges which are very unique challenges, even human fails in understanding them. And I will talk about garden path sentences here. So garden path sentences are a type of sentences where you will not get the exact meaning of a particular given sentence while you start reading it. For example, the horse raced past the barn fell. It's a very quite celebrated example to give the garden path sentence. Now this sentence, when you start reading, when you reach the place raced, you'll see, okay, raised is a verb, right. But when you keep reading and there is another verb here, okay, then you go back and change the decision, okay, this is not a verb of the sentence, but this is the main verb of the sentence, right. So similarly, the government plans to raise taxes were defeated. Now when we start reading the sentence, the first interpretation is plans looks like a verb, but now once you keep reading, then you come back and see, oh no, it's not a verb, but it is a government plan, so it is a noun, right. So the first interpretation is the government is planning to raise the tax, whereas the final interpretation after completing the sentence is the plans of the government to raise taxes were defeated, right. So similarly, the old man the boat, right. When we start reading the sentence, we start with old and we'll go here to man. So automatically we see, okay, there is something called old man, right. But when you finish the sentence, oh, it's not that case, because old here is not an adjective, but it is used in the sense of a noun. That means the old man the boat, the old person is manning the boat, right. So this kind of sentences are always difficult even for the human being. So garden path sentences are like you are in a garden with multiple paths, which path to be selected so that you are reaching your final destination. So in the same way, in languages, if you have a sentence, there are multiple senses attached to the sense. Now, when you start traveling to each of the word as you are going into the paths of garden, then finally you are reaching to the destination. So, that decides what the meaning that we are trying to infer to the previous word, right. So, now what we are actually doing is we are trying to rely on the next word's meaning to actually understand the previous word's category. Now, the problem is well understood that language itself encodes lot of ambiguity within the word. Now, understanding that ambiguity and trying to disambiguate them lexically is done by POS tagging. Let me again give some more examples, like girls have broken hearts, right. Now, if I ask you to disambiguate this one, because it has two senses, one sense is girls have, that means have as a main verb, they have broken hearts as a kind of one unit. Now, another sense is you just take have broken as one unit, girls have broken someone's heart, right. So, now the interpretation is have broken can be interpreted in two ways. When you put have as a main verb, let us say I call it as a verb, I'm just calling it as a verb, and broken as a adjective to hearts. So, this gives you an interpretation. Another interpretation, you call have as an auxiliary verb and broken as a verb. So, this unit and this unit provides you two different senses, right. So, similarly in the case of time flies like an arrow, either time can be a noun or time can be a verb or a noun depending upon the context. It can be a time flies like an arrow, that means there is something called noun time and they are flying as an action looking like an arrow, or time flies, that means there are flies called time flies, they like an arrow, right. So, similarly you can have multiple interpretation when we are trying to put the category associated to it. And another problem is whenever we encounter a new word in a language, which category it goes to, right. So, unknown words are also very important, because just a mere bag of words will not solve our part of speech tagging problem, because language keep evolves and it keeps getting many words from different languages or different scenario. Now, how to give a proper category to it? So, all these challenges actually makes us to feel that okay, building a POS tagger helps us in disambiguating the sentences when a particular word has multiple sense and category associated with it. Now, how to proceed to it? So, the natural question is, what are these part of speech? How do we specify a set of suitable part of speech in a language? Now, famous traditional POS taggers that we might have studied in schools or grammar books are nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, conjunction, interjunction, right? Okay, cool. Now, all these 8 categories, are they enough or do we need more? So, the question is, do we need more or not? Yes, the answer is yes. What about how do we actually categorize 5 here? Can 5 be called as noun or a verb? No. And how do we categorize the words like the? There is no category that we can give. And how do we categorize the symbol like dollar? Because in a language, when it is a textual information, there are a lot of information that are there. How are we going to actually capture them? Even the punctuation, because every punctuation is associated with some sense, right? There is a question marker which tells you that the sentence is interrogation. There is an exclamation marker that tells you that the whole content information is been spoken in a more exclamation way. So, all these things need not be captured or cannot be captured through this 8 common part of speech. Now, we need to have more and more part of speech. So, that is why let us understand again the word classes in languages. As we already know what is an open class and closed class through our morphological analysis understanding. So, open class words are class of words where new members are added. So, especially nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs are open class. On the other hand, closed classes are languages where they are having relatively fixed membership. They have closed classes like prepositions, determiners and conjunction, where we may not add any new members to this list. Now, let us talk one by one what are the kind of categories or subcategories can come under open class. So, nouns are traditionally grouped into either proper nouns or common nouns. So, proper nouns are nothing but like names of person, names of a place or names of any of the institute or material or whatever that we want to name as something, we call it as proper noun. So, the best thing about this proper noun when you are comparing it with a common noun is they are not preceded by articles. So, you can say the book is upstairs, but you cannot say the Rani is upstairs, right. So, on the other hand, common nouns can be a count noun or a mass noun, where we can have some kind of grammatical enumeration, something like singular and plural, right. Mass nouns, it can be conceptualized as a homogeneous group of words like snow, salt or something communism. So, they appear without articles, where singular nouns cannot occur without the article, right. So, there is another category, especially for Indian language context, is called nouns of space and time. They are a kind of adverbial nouns because they are special type of nouns without any number marking. For example, if you take in Hindi, upar actually can take upar se as a kind of case marker, but it cannot have a plural marker, right. So, it has a ability to take case marking like kitab se, but upar se, but you cannot have a plural marking like other nouns, right. So, now this kind of nouns are called as nouns of space and time, especially in Indian languages. It is very rich in terms of like taking morphologically taking some kind of inflection, but they are actually adverbs. Now, verbs are other major categories in languages which refer to actions and process, and other number of morphological forms that we can derive from verbs are eat, eats, eating and past participle form. So, they are again been like changed into multiple categories. One is finite verbs, that means they are actually main verb and they occur before a final pass and they complete the meaning of a sentence. And non-finite verbs are verbs which cannot stand as a main verb, but they rarely occur before a final pass. So, these non-finite verbs are always like kind of it cannot stand alone in the sentence. And infinitives are another thing where you could see in languages in English like to see, they are actually base form, they occur as a base form but preceded by particle like to. And gerunds are like nouns, right. They occupy the position of noun, nominal position, and they can take the inflection like nouns, but they are still having the quality of a verb. So, laughing is good for health. So, laugh actually is a verb, but you are adding the derivational marker here, ing is a derivational marker. Now, it becomes a noun, right. So, auxiliary is another important thing. All languages have auxiliaries. So, most of our Indian languages, the auxiliary position is actually after a verb. There is a verb and followed by an auxiliary. Whereas in English, auxiliaries are always occur before a verb. And adjectives are important categories again. They describe properties or qualities, and most languages have adjectives. Adjectives for the concept like color, age and value, but we might not use like all adjectives in all places. There is a kind of difference between where to use a particular adjective and where not use the particular adjective. For example, you can say long hair. You cannot say something like long stone, where you have to say huge stone, right. So, this kind of differences, where to use a particular adjective is decided by the quality of the noun it actually modifies. The another category is called an adverb, which are actually modifying something called verbs, and again there are different kind of adjectives. Some adjectives are directional adjectives, some are manner adjectives, some are temporal, some are degree. Okay. And the other closed class categories are like pronouns, prepositions, determiners, like again the pronouns, conjunction, particles, numerals kind of thing. Now, we do have multiple categories in hand. Now, how are we going to get the tag set? So, now part of speech tag sets are collection of labels. They are used to classify the words based on the grammatical rules. Now, the granularity is we need to decide the level, how many tags that we need to select, and the more detailed tags are distinguished from the less detailed tags. Some are coarse grained tag set, another are fine grained tag sets. Coarse grained tag sets are less number of tags and looking at only the shallow or the more super tags, whereas fine grained tags all again go into more deeper. For example, nouns again converting into proper noun and common noun, and the verbs again differentiate the finite verb, non-finite verb, infinitive verb and gerundal verb kind of thing. So, it is depending on how granularity that are required for a particular task, we have to select the POS tagging. There are three major types of POS tag set I am going to talk here. One is universal tag set, which is called. So, universal tag sets are designed for cross-linguistic compatibility, not taking only one language in picture, but looking at multiple languages and trying to find out what are the common categories that can go ahead. So, universal dependencies uses this universal tag set, which are actually being adopted from Google, and standardized other tag sets are widely accepted features like pen tree bank, which are being standardized especially for English kind of languages, and language specific tag sets are also being used most widely, and it's tailored for a specific language purpose. For example, BIS for Indian language context, this Bureau of Indian Standard is being given for this particular tag set. So, these three tag sets are one of the types that we could say how we can build the tags. So, let us start with pen tree bank tag set. It also has number of tags. It is not a complete fine grain or a complete coarse grain, but it has some kind of fine granularity across the category. For example, CC is used for coordination, CD is used for cardinal, DT determiner, EX for existential there, because in English there are two kinds of there. One is there is a book, okay, there he comes. So, there you can even say there he comes, you are actually looking at the location, but when you say there is a book, you are telling again actually there is a location, but there is a person. So, then the location is not so visibly known, but we are talking about there is a person and his name is something, right. So, that existential kind of thing are given with a category called X. And foreign words, preposition. So, in is being used as a prepositional marker, okay. And JJ, as I told you, it's a mnemonic form for adjective, and comparative adjectives are JJ, or superlative adjectives are JJS, and other list item markers 1, 2, 3 kind of thing are given as LS, and modal verbs, especially the verbs which show some kind of modality, the auxiliary verbs are given as MD, and noun singular form NN, noun plural NNS. As you could see, the morphological pattern is also been identified under this category. So, if we start identifying all the morphological category in Indian languages, again it will be very difficult, because one word can inflect for multiple inflection. So, we cannot give the tag for each of them. So, in that way, building a new tag set for specifically tailored for Indian languages are very important. And proper noun singular is given with NNP, and proper noun plural with NNPS. So similarly, predeterminer, possessive ending, prepersonal pronoun, you could see multiple tags are being given, and verbs are given with subtypes like this, right, and all other non-alphabetic characters also gets their own tags. So the second type of tag set is universal dependencies. It's a standardized set of tags used for part of speech across multiple languages. It's developed as a part of universal dependencies project, and it provides a consistent POS tagging framework for cross-linguistic research and application, especially for cross-linguistically if you want to have a similar tag set parallelly across languages. So POS use coming from your UD might help us. And it uses again a minimalistic approach. Instead of going for multiple tags, only select the categories which are very core for any languages that represent across the board. So this is the POS tags used by UD. Again, they have differentiated between open class and closed class and other categories. So adjective, adverb, interjection, noun, proper noun, verbs are put under the open class, whereas adposition actually called preposition or a postposition, auxiliary, coordinating conjunctions like and, or kind of thing, determiner, number, particles, pronoun and subordinating conjunctions like or, if kind of thing are called as sconch. And other categories like punctuation, symbols are actually differentiated, and if there is no other category that we can give from this particular list, if it is a very specific to a particular language, still they can use X as a category. And let us come to the Indian language tag set. Indian language tag set again is a BIS tag set, Bureau of Indian Standard 1. So it was developed to standardize POS tagging across various Indian languages. So this tag set provides the kind of guideline for languages like Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, Marathi and many more languages. Again, this is hierarchical in structure, similar to pen tree bank where there is a verb, and again under verb we have multiple other verb types. Similarly, BIS tag is also hierarchical in thing. So it includes both universal categories like noun and verb, and most importantly the language specific, especially Indian language specific tags are addressed using this particular tag set. So this is a common POS tag sets. So nouns, proper noun, nouns of space and time, which we have talked, which is very unique in Indian languages, and pronoun, personal pronoun, reflexive pronoun, relative pronoun and reciprocal. So all these things are part of pronouns now hierarchically, and also WH word, demonstratives, and verbs again have hierarchically finite verb, non-finite verb, infinitives, gerunds, auxiliaries, and adjectives and adverbs are different category. And there comes postposition, because you could see in pen tree bank IN is used for a preposition. In UD, ADP, that is adposition, whether it be a preposition or a postposition, it can be called as adposition, but whereas in Indian languages we have very clearly only postposition. So this has been addressed. Similarly, conjunction, coordinating conjunctor and subordinating conjunction, and quotatives. Quotatives are again very specific to Indian languages. For example, in Tamil, if you say I said that he came, right? So what happened in languages like Tamil, we say he come initially, then that is actually an equivalent to Endru. Avan varuvan endru naan sonneen. Okay. So this Endru is nothing but actually a conjunctive participle form of the verb en. En is nothing but to say. So to say is nothing but to quote something, right? So this quotatives, especially the complementizer marker in English, is equivalent to the quotative marker in Indian languages. So that's been addressed here. And particles, classifier, interjunction, intensifier, negation, quantifier and other residuals, foreign words, symbols, punctuations are all being addressed in the BIS-POS tags. So there are many methods that we can develop POS tagging. It can be a rule based, it can be a transformation based, or it can be a statistical based POS tagging. So we will see each one of them in detail in the next few lectures. Thank you.